We are talking about the tropics. They are starting to stir just a little bit. Don't want to call it waking up just yet, because even though Africa continues to send off tropical waves, the Atlantic basin is not supporting them. So good news continuing. In this video, though, we are going to break down two tropical waves. One of those does have a chance to develop as it impacts the Caribbean getting into the weekend. Then we're going to break down where we stand so far this season. We're way behind schedule, as you may imagine. Stick around to the end for that. All right, so we're going to start with the satellite. First off, I want to show you where these two waves are that are now out into the open waters of the Atlantic. The Lesser Antilles, the Leeward and Windward Islands, are on the far left-hand side of your screen. Here is South America. The first wave we are watching is this big batch of thunderstorms out over the central Atlantic. There's still not a lot to be desired in terms of organization with this one. So again, good news. Right now it's just a hodgepodge of thunderstorms. As you go further back to the east, closer to Africa, here are the Cabo Verde Islands, and we have another flare-up of thunderstorms. That's our secondary wave that will also have a chance for development as we move over the next 5 days. I'm turning on the blobs, if you will, from the National Hurricane Center. This is the development zone that the NHC has highlighted for the area in which these two waves could develop. There's that yellow shaded area. That means it's a low chance. Orange means medium, and then the red means high. So still just a low chance for development over the next 5 days. But this wave out ahead, the first wave here, we'll have the opportunity for some gradual development as we get closer to the weekend. So places like Martinique and Guadeloupe in the Leeward Islands want to pay attention to this. I still think it's going to have trouble developing, but nonetheless, we could have some inclement weather, some thunderstorms as we get into Thursday, Friday, into the weekend through parts of the Leeward Islands, and then eventually getting into Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, and Haiti. So just something to keep in mind as we watch this over the next couple of days. I'm going to show you some model forecasts now, and I'd love for you to stick around because I want to show you guys just how far behind schedule we are in terms of average for the intensity of the hurricane season. That's coming up in just a couple of minutes. First, though, I want to show you the potential progression of these two waves. We're looking at the ensembles. This is the European ensemble. And for these, again, as we always preach, we're looking at the clusters. So not all of those L's represent a storm per se. They represent the ensemble's idea of where that center of the system could end up being. So that first cluster here, as we fast forward through Thursday morning, this is going to be on September 15th, or the evening of the 14th into the 15th. Nonetheless, as we go out in time, watch what happens. This cluster of L's, that's where our storm could be, getting really, really close to the Leeward Islands. So again, Guadeloupe, Martinique, Barbados. We're going to have to watch out for this one, getting into the Virgin Islands as well, both the U.S. and British Virgin Islands. So now we are looking at September 16th, and there's nothing screaming that this system is going to be too terribly strong. Again, the environment's still kind of out there, but some inclement weather. So if you're living in here, if you're going on vacation to the Caribbean islands, it's certainly going to bring clouds, rain, thunderstorms, gusty conditions. I'm just not sold that we're going to have a depression or named system. It's certainly possible, but again, the environment not that great, which is again good news for us, bad for the storms, but it could still bring inclement weather to us in the islands. Fast forwarding out even further, we're now looking at September 17th into the 18th, and now we're getting a cluster. See the L's kind of spreading out a little bit. Again, as we get further out in time, as you may imagine, the uncertainty of the location goes up. That's why that spread gets. So we have anywhere from getting into the Caribbean itself to the extreme southwest Atlantic, potentially impacting the Turks and Caicos, maybe the Bahamas, maybe the southeast of the United States, way, way, way into the future. Again, that's already out to the 18th, and we would still be in the early 20s at that point. So just something to watch. The water temperature is jet fuel in this area. It is all untapped. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a couple of minutes. First, we're going to go back to the second wave here. That's the one that's near the Cabo Verde Islands now. So still on the 18th, again, continuing to go out. And there's still most of these members of the ensemble here keep it relatively weak. Again, the lower the pressure, there are some here that on the northern side that get it down to 970 millibars, 987. Lower the pressure, the stronger the storm. But the cluster here wants to keep it south, at least the main cluster, and that's what we're looking for here. And the pressure is north of 1,000 millibars, which again suggests a pretty weak system out here in the central Atlantic. All right, we are going to head to the GFS, and it paints a very similar picture in how these could develop. Also, the GFS hinting at something here in the Bay of Campeche that we're going to have to watch. As mentioned, just like around the Turks and Caicos and the Bahamas, there is a lot of untapped energy, if you will, jet fuel, deep, warm water in the Gulf of Mexico that has not been churned up from any kind of systems. That's going to be a potential caveat later in the season here as that water remains extremely warm. So if something were to get into there, that would be an issue. You see going forward on the GFS, again, there's something in the western Gulf of Mexico that no doubt that we're going to keep an eye on, but it's more about these two waves out in the central Atlantic. And notice the GFS kind of washes out that first wave here. And I'm kind of in agreement with this as, look at this, by that point, it's almost fizzled out. All the L's start to go away. Doesn't mean we're not going to get inclement weather. I do think we're going to see a round of thunderstorms and gusty conditions from this tropical wave into the Caribbean. But still, the good news is ensemble forecasts, at least the GFS, want to keep this thing relatively weak. Now, as we move further out into the future, and we're back on the 21st into the 22nd. Now, L's are popping up everywhere. Again, this is now the ensemble just throwing anything out there. But regardless, anything that could be off the east coast of Florida, into the Bahamas, into the Turks and Caicos is relatively weak. And then same deal with that guy way out by the Cabo Verde Islands. It does something a little different. It barely develops the system at all. So while the Euro was a little stronger and a little further south, some of those ensemble members of the GFS. Just wanted to thank all of the new subscribers and welcome everyone who's finding this channel for the first time. We would love to have you alongside us as we talk weather all the time. Please hit that subscribe button and the alert bell. You'll be alerted to anytime we post new content. I'd also love to know where you guys are watching from. Post that in the comments. Let's get to it. All right, so I promised an update on where we stand. This is a metric known as ACE. It stands for Accumulated Cyclone Energy. It's a big metric that measures the intensity and longevity of a system once it becomes a named storm. So from tropical storm to its hurricane life if it gets there, and then back to tropical storm. Once it becomes a depression, again, it's no longer calculated. Anyway, this big black line here, this is the average. This little itty bitty blue line down here is where we stand. So this goes through September 10th now, so a couple of days ago, and our observed ACE to date is 29.6. Now you see that huge jump. That was because of courtesy of Danielle and Earl that were pretty large, powerful, and relatively speaking, long-lived hurricanes that were just meandering out in the North Atlantic. Earl got close to Bermuda, but thankfully it was just a brush. Here's where we should be on September 10th, 58.2. So we are way behind schedule, thankfully. And again, in the short term, there's really nothing that screams that we are going to make up a ton of this intensity, if you will. And again, right now, we're just in a wait and see mode. Until something develops, I'm really not going to believe it. It's that seeing is believing thing. Models have spit out strong hurricanes all year, and they've just not happened. And that's something that we've talked about extensively on this channel, that don't fall for that hype, because most of the time these are phantom storms, so to speak. And that's exactly what we've seen. That's hopefully what we'll continue to see. Again, I think models are really starting to bite on the environment just not being good for storms to develop. That's good for us. Again, we're watching those two waves closely in the short term, but hopefully it's just some beneficial rain to the Caribbean islands, maybe some gusty winds, and nothing named or no depression. But we're going to keep a close eye on this for you. If you guys loved hanging out with us today, please hit that subscribe button. We would love to have you along for the ride. Please post in the comments where you are watching from. and we'll continue to watch the tropics and all things weather. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Great having you alongside us.